I think the best way to do it is get someone to film it for you and put your PayPal details on the screen, and you'd be a billionaire. No, like when you see people on Witherspoons that put up on Facebook, I'm at Witherspoons Belfast at table 78, and people can send you drinks via the Witherspoons app. They can do that. It's the equivalent of that. Put your PayPal on the screen, and then just hit Stephen Nolan, and you'll buy your own island. You know what I mean? You have that much money. You know what I mean? And you could pay all your bills back, and there'd be no more bailiffs.
So, welcome to another episode of Chatter. And today we have Ruairi Woods, the comedian, host of Woods Talk, and leader of the Woods Tang clan. That's a mouthful. I should have practiced that before we started. So yeah, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks very much for having me. It's awfully nice of you in these trying times to see a bit of generosity. It's very kind of you.
Well, you know, I can't give out vaccines, so the best thing I can do is invite people on my podcast.
Yeah, it's the best you can do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you get started in comedy?
I had a sort of baptism of fire in terms of doing stand up, in that I was dared to do it by a mate who was drunk. I was in Lavery's bar, and obviously Lavery's owns various bars in Belfast. One of them being the Pavilion on the Ormer Road. And we were drunk, and obviously on the screens, they advertise various things in various different bars associated with Lavery's, one of which was an open mic night for comedy that was run by Graham Watson. And drunkenly, I was dared to do it. So I think it was within 5 or 6 weeks of that, was stood on stage trying to make people laugh. And I've been doing it ever since. Like, it's so unusual. Like, it's always something I was always funny to my mates, but I wasn't enough of a psycho to go, I could do this for a living, sure kid. You know what I mean? It was never like that. So it came as a result of a dare, a very, very chance sort of event, you know.
How'd that first time go? Do you remember what you talked about?
I talked about the time that a spide or a schmick or whatever you want to call them these days, the sort of Belfast pound stretcher blazing squad looking dudes. I had a story, which is true, about the time that one of them came up to me when he was drunk and told me I looked like a Polish Gok Wan. So that was one of my first, which unfortunately true and unfortunately still applicable. And I talked about being drunk in the Asda in Strabane, where I'm from, and I also talked about the time, oh my God, I talked about, unfortunately, this is true as well. I was working in a Centra for years, and you know, when you've kind of got like a routine in your head, you scan the stuff, ask for the money, they give you money, you give you change, blah, blah, blah. Within this sort of routine was, you know, you had to lick your thumb to separate plastic bags. You've got a big bunch of them. And to this day, that's still the most irritating thing in the world, is separating plastic bags without doing it. And for some reason, there was some day I was flustered and messed up the order in which I was doing stuff, and genuinely took some guy's stuff, scanned it, said how much it was. He gave me money. And just before I gave him his change, I licked the money in my hand and gave it to him. Yeah, that's unfortunately true as well. So I just kind of talked about me generally making a hash of basic, fundamental things in life. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that can happen sometimes if you're doing something, you're so like you're not even thinking about what you're doing anymore, and that can happen if you're like in a routine of shit.
Yeah, but and it was okay. Like the set, you know, it went fine. You know, it went well enough to do it again, but I just did like I still have the footage of it and watched it recently, and it made me cringe. Like I couldn't take the mic out of the stand properly, and then when I did, I nearly busted my eye because the mic just went like that. And I was like, felt like I just had a real dry throat, and even with a microphone, still didn't feel like I was talking loud enough. You know, really that sort of level of anxiety that you get. But yeah, such a weird thing to still be doing it, given how I started, you know.
Did you ever reuse any of the material?
I used the Polish Gokwan thing for a fair while, before Gokwan wasn't popular anymore, so I dropped it. I had to change to Alan Carr for a few years, and then it was Sue Perkins, who used to host the Great British Bake Off. I did that for a while, and I don't know who it's going to be now. To be honest, could be, I don't know.
I mean, if you said Gokwan to someone who's like 18 now, they probably wouldn't have any fucking clue who you meant.
They wouldn't have a clue who he was at all. I mean, he was so famous for quite a long time, and then I don't even know if he still does anything on TV. Probably does the odd wee bit, but
what was the show called? Was it How to Look Good Naked?
Oh yes, How to Look Good Naked, and yeah.
I mean, it's kind of hypocritical. He's like criticizing people while he's still got clothes on.
Exactly, yeah. It's like you have to commit, you have to set an example. So get the scrotum plum out and let me see what you're working with, Gogwan. You know?
So before you did that, like before the dare, had you ever tried or had you ever thought about comedy before? Like, had you ever like seriously considered it, or was that like just like spur of the moment, sort of go for it sort of thing?
It was, well, I say spur of the moment, I was dared, but obviously there was an element of having to wait. Like when I applied for a spot, it was early-ish to mid-September, and then it was October 18th that I did my first set. But in terms of thinking about it prior to messaging the open mic Facebook page for a spot, no, because it just didn't seem feasible. It always seemed like something other people did, you know what I mean? And I grew up in Strabane where there's not much of a showbiz, lifestyle. There's no showbiz aesthetic in Strabane. We still use a sundial down there for fuck's sake. And, so it just never seemed feasible. But obviously because I moved to Belfast, because I was studying media, hence why I worked in the centre for so long. And so it just all fell into place that way. But growing up in Strabane, no, I was lucky to be, the third best window licker in my family. You know what I mean? That was my goal. You know what I mean?
So you're telling me that Strabane isn't like an absolute center of comedy and media?
Oh no, it's not. It wouldn't be a hub of entertainment. You know what I mean? Despite Hugo Duncan and myself obviously being there, but no, I mean, like, it just didn't seem like the thing to do. And even in terms of, when I was younger and pre-university, I still think in terms of Northern Ireland, there wasn't even a lot I could have done near Strabane, even if I had been willing to travel. Don't know if there was much happening in Derry and Omagh. I think it was Belfast via the Empire was probably your main thing. And then obviously the difference between that and the difference in the scene now is night and day, obviously. So there's more going on now. But when I started, there still wasn't even a wild lot. So I was lucky to be based in Belfast, and lucky that I was able to live abroad and, and get my visa to go to Belfast and my injections and all that stuff.
So like, do you have like comedy heroes that you like try and base yourself on, or people that inspire your comedy now?
It sort of varies. I do have comedy heroes, but I wouldn't do them the disservice of trying to be anything like them. My main sort of thing to this day, in terms of stand-up and any sort of writing, has always been like the mirror sort of vibe, like stuff that people do every day that they might not realize. So when I first saw, to a small extent when I was younger, Billy Connolly, but it was sort of solidified via Peter Kay and the TV show The Royal Family. That's where it all kind of set in stone for me. To this day, The Royal Family is probably my favorite TV show of all time. The way it's written, the fact that it's stuff everybody says, everybody does, but it's with such a clever twist. So that's what I try and do. So Peter Kay, Royal Family, and then obviously you have the big hitters. Eddie Murphy's quite high up for me, Richard Pryor. And then more recent comics like Bill Burr. I love Bill Burr. And there's an Italian-American comedian called Sebastian Maniscalco, who I'm quite into as well. He had a small role in The Irishman. This year he's getting quite big now. So yeah, it sort of varies, but I wouldn't do anybody the disservice of trying to be anything like them,
I watched that film, The Irishman, actually. I watched the first 30 minutes and nearly fell asleep. And I was like, seriously, This is the best that they can, like, because I'd seen loads of reviews about how great it was, and I never managed to get through more than 30 minutes without like falling asleep.
Yeah, it's you need to take time off work to watch The Irishman. You know what I mean? And I think there's an element to the fact that Netflix gave Scorsese all this money to make the film. He had the cast, most ridiculous cast in cinema history, probably. And he's like, I'm Scorsese, I can do what I want. So anything I want to drag out, nobody's going to tell me to shorten sequences and anything like that. And then I think there's just that obvious element of when you're alive right now, because of social media and phones and apps, nobody's attention span is worth talking about anymore. Because like I can't, like I long things now, I can't do it anymore. People say like, have you watched Making a Murder? No, because I will fall asleep after 20 minutes, or bare minimum be on IMDb reading about Making a Murder. Do you know what I mean? Like I can't, like that's why we bursts, Royal Family, Still Game, The Office, Phoenix Nights, anything we short things on Netflix is just about doable now. But The Irishman, I think I did like 6 sessions, like wee half-hour bursts. You know what I mean? It's a tough slog.
I mean, like Scorsese's like you used to him doing long films. I think it must the start was just so boring. Like when you don't have like DiCaprio just like swearing his way through the first 30 minutes and like talking about hookers and cocaine, it's just suddenly not as entertaining.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna make a film of that length, there's no problem with having sort of quieter or more dialogue driven sequences, but at least try and open the film strong. Like if you're obviously referring to The Wolf of Wall Street, from what I remember, like that sort of basically kicked off with DiCaprio drunk in a helicopter coming home. That was one of the early things, and you're like, okay, well, I'm watching all this. You see drunk in helicopter escapades.
Yeah, and then there's the other bit where he's like, the other opening scene is like driving down the road talking about his Ferrari while his wife gives him a blowjob. It's just slightly different to that like car scene in the opening bit of The Irishman, where they're just like with the women in the back's just complaining about not being able to smoke.
Yeah, exactly. It's wildly different. I mean, if they had smoked De Niro's pole instead of a cigarette, we could have been playing. They were smoking the raw. If there's anything they're going to smoke, you know what I mean? You may get the Listerine in you and.
So how have you found like trying to do comedy stuff during the lockdown with everything closed? Like, I mean, you've been doing the podcast, but have you been doing anything else?
I'm lucky enough that Woods Talk has kind of saved my life a wee bit in terms of being productive. Stand up wise, I was lucky to get a wee bit of work when the restrictions first lifted, which obviously seems like 13 years ago now. But in terms of I've been offered like Zoom stuff and things like that, and I've said no because it's just I don't feel the same about doing stand up over Zoom. Even if there was people and they could unmute themselves, they'd be like, ha ha, and then mute themselves again. But I'm lucky. I just have Woodstock, and that's kept me very, very busy. I think the lockdown, I try not to look at it in a negative way. I know a lot of my mates would be like, I can't do any gigs and I have no outlets and stuff. Whereas I see it as just a chance to focus on other aspects of what I try and do, which is obviously Woods Talk and do just a bit more writing and maybe some online sketches. If I think they're funny enough to film, I could do that maybe. But I'm just sort of moving my energy to a different, like side of the wall, if that makes sense.
How long have you been doing the podcast actually?
I think I started about 2 years ago and did it for about half a year, and then naturally just fell out of rhythm with it. I just got busy and then it just kind of fell by the wayside. Then I brought it back maybe a couple of months later. But I think yourself, when you start out, particularly the way I started out, I was using a microphone that might as well have came free with a Kinder Egg. Didn't know anything about software, how to edit audio files, none of that. So it didn't seem enjoyable. But then when I came back, I had like new equipment and like new artwork and had a bit more of a vibe about how I was doing things. And then, just kept it consistent. I think you probably feel this yourself. Consistency is the key, and that's how you engage people. So yeah, since I brought it back, I haven't missed a week. You know what I mean? So it's been a fair while, but I don't know when I actually kicked off. It was like a slow slow sort of build at the start.
Yeah, yeah. I remember looking back. I think at the start of this year, because I'd not done much last year for this, or well, sorry, 2019. It still feels like 2020. I'd
Yeah,
not done much in 2019 just because I'd spent the whole year basically writing my book,
yeah,
and I basically couldn't be bothered to like focus my energy on anything else.
yeah,
And then I like started again in April of last year when the lockdown started, and I was like, well, I'm gonna need this to probably help promote things, so it'll be useful to get started again. And I went back and listened to like my early episodes. Like the audio quality was so dire. Like I was like, holy shit, someone listened to this, and
yeah,
I couldn't believe that someone had actually taken the time to like get through it all. When I listened to the audio quality and like just the quality of like the actual podcast, like the content itself was just, I was really leaning on my guests at that point. Like, not that I'm saying I'm the
yeah,
greatest host in the world now, but I'm definitely a little better than I was at the start.
yeah. It's like anything. I suppose there's a real learning curve to it, and I think it's handy to look back on your early work, and obviously 99% of you will cringe and want to just headbutt a wall for 20 minutes. But then when you look at where you are now, that's kind of, it sort of perks you up a bit when you look at the difference. Like I remember I was bored one day. I looked at Joe Rogan's very first Joe Rogan Experience podcast, and I'm like, did you put a webcam in the cistern and just what the hell is that? And like even my own, I don't know, like this is still on SoundCloud, but my first couple of podcasts, as I say, I didn't have a clue about any software, any equipment, and was too afraid to ask in case I got slagged because it seemed pretty basic. So I was using the sound recorder on my laptop, just the basic sound recorder, didn't use any software. So, and I was using, like I say, a pound stretcher microphone. And I was doing like all my podcasts are at least an hour usually. So the sound recorder couldn't hack it. So after about 20 minutes, the audio would like slow down. And obviously with my voice, that's not beneficial. You know what I mean? Because I sound like turf anyway. But see when it slows down, I was sitting there, say I was talking about, say I was talking about the Irishman or whatever, even though timeline that doesn't match up. But I would sort of be saying, I watched the Irishman over the weekend. It would just slow me down dramatically. And I was like, this podcast is about 6 hours now because it slowed me down. And it's I was like, oh, I may need to. That's when I moved over to Audacity, and I was like, oh, this is quite good. But again, it's such a learning curve. It really is. Like, and you don't learn until you start doing, unfortunately.
You sure that was the sound recorder and you weren't just getting like time just wasn't slowing down while you were listening to your early content?
It could have been a mixture of both. Yeah, it could have been me having a mild swelling of the brain just listening to the appalling thing. That reminds me of sorry to go off topic, but the
No, go
whole
for it.
speed thing. My dad's like 75 now, and when the lockdown kicked in, he messaged me saying I'd like to get internet into the house because we're in lockdown. And previous to this, I had no interest in internet, not really tech savvy whatsoever, and doesn't give a shit. He's just like, I read the paper, I watch the TV. That's me grand to say. But he was like, a bit of internet would be good for streaming. He likes the shows and stuff like that. But he was like, I don't want to get internet. I don't want to get like a package that's too cheap. And I was like, what do you mean? Because he's notoriously tight. Like every dad in this country doesn't want to spend money. Like my dad would buy odd numbers of socks if it was cheaper. Do you know what I mean? He'd buy like about 17 socks there for £1.30. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, why do you want like a really cheap package? And he was like, well, I was reading about it. I was reading about internet speed. And I was like, okay. And he said, well, the more money you pay for your internet, the quicker the internet is, the quicker the speeds. And I was like, yeah, that's right. But he was like, but if I get a really cheap package, does that mean my internet's going to be really slow? So say I'm watching Deal or No Deal, it's usually a 25-minute program. If I get slow internet and the stream slower, is it going to take me like an hour and a half to watch it? Swear to God, he was like, so don't get me anything too fast, nothing too slow. Like, try to watch Speed last week, took me 2 weeks.
He's worried the internet's too fast. He's going to be like watching Deal or No Deal in like double speed. Be like,
yeah, everyone sounds like Alvin and the Chipmunks. You're like, Jesus. Oh, you know what I mean? It's great. But as I say, original point. you learn these things, man. It's and again, it's like, you know, the way you don't really learn to drive until you pass your test.
Yeah.
That's what any sort of aspect of this sort of vibe is, whether it's podcasting, stand-up acting, I'm sure writing a book. You know what I mean? It's until you start writing, you don't know if you're doing a good job or not. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that must be serious. Like, I mean, I'm just curious about it. You wrote a full book. I mean, you know, how many drafts did it take to even get your first chapter? Like, I mean, when did you feel like you got into the rhythm?
I mean, I legit feel like I got into the rhythm when I started writing my second one. Like,
Yeah, all right.
like the like honestly, like the first half draft of the first like 2 chapters took like 6 months, because most of it was like, most of the stuff I was putting in wasn't relevant. I was doing a lot of research and like just trying to like throw shit at this Word document until it looked like I had something to show for it.
Yeah.
And then like eventually like I kind of got into the rhythm, and the only thing that really like kickstarted my ass was when I finally got the first 3 chapters finished, like, and sent off to some publishers, and like some of them came back and were like, yeah, we'd like your book. And I was like, shit, I gotta finish it now. And
yeah, it's a good motivator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was, yeah, it was, yeah. I still don't feel like I remember getting to the end of it and being like, that's it. I will never write another thing in my life. That's it. That's the only things I will ever put on paper ever. This is it. This is the pinnacle of my career. Like, I'm done. And then when I started writing the next one, I was like, hang on, that was like a warm up. Like I shouldn't be saying this. It's a great book. Go buy it. It's but like I only felt like right at the end that I was finally like hitting a stride where it was like at least passable.
Yeah. So like when you're doing that, how many chapters do you need to send to potential publishers? Like, is it just 1 or 2 chapters?
You got to send for nonfiction books, most publishers want three chapters.
Okay, and then it's still quite ballsy though, you know, to say I'll send you 3 chapters, and if they like it, they're like, we're going to publish it. But you're like, I still have like another 15 to write, so it's really ballsy on our part to go based off, you know, an 8th of this book, we're going to publish it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like the first 3 chapters are brilliant.
Yeah.
And then it falls by the wayside then, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's taking you're taking a serious gamble there. You know, like the rest could just be utter trash, and you've agreed to publish it.
Yeah, imagine getting the feedback where they're like, in chapter 5, we have Robert De Niro getting a sock job in an Nissan Micra. Where did that come from? And you're like, just delete that. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, for fiction, for like a novel, you have to send them the whole thing. But it's like, because it's about Brexit, it's also fiction. But
yeah.
Well, yeah. So it's definitely I'd say it's definitely a bit of a gamble on their part. But I mean, they were fine with it, so I'm not going to argue.
Yeah. Can I just double check as well that we're allowed to like curse and talk about certain like racy subjects? Because I've said some horrible things already. Is that?
I mean, it's a bit too late to say anything about it, but like, I really don't care.
It's okay.
The only thing we can't talk about is COVID treatments. I had a video removed because I talked about something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the worst bit was like, I was like citing articles about it. And like, were like, it was like the Daily Mail and like somewhere else was talking about it. And I was like, oh, there's this cool thing. And then I'm not going to mention it specifically in case they ban this as well. But they removed the video. They were like, content violations. I was like, what? Like, I'm citing legit news articles. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Madness.
Yeah, I mean, I've submitted my appeal, but I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah. So what do you think? Like, there's a lot of different types of comedy, especially now. You got people doing like podcasts and stuff. There's a lot of comedians doing it. You got like, I don't know, you had Vines before. You got TikTok is basically the same fucking thing. Like, what is like the worst type of comedy? Like, what won't you touch with a barge pole? You're just like, no.
I think, and again, this is not like a slight against any people that do this type of thing, but for me, it's just me personally, I'm not too keen on musical parodies. And I mean, not people who write their own legitimate like comedy songs, that's great, but know the people who just kind of change a lyric here and there. and go like, oh, here's my parody of whatever. Again, there's certainly a market for it, but for me, I just don't really see where the craft is went into it. We just change a couple of words. That kind of makes me cringe a wee bit. It seems very sort of hacky to an extent.
Yeah. I mean, I've been laughing all day. My one of my best friends keeps sending me like Sandman, or not Sandman, Candyman parodies about the Tendy Man, about the GameStop thing. And it's absolutely cracking me up. It's like,
yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's just for me personally. It's just weird to me. But again, when it's done well, it is hilarious. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like people writing their own like musical comedy is always amazing. I'm such a sucker for like, if you get like any like some of my favorite shows are like South Park or The Simpsons. You get any of them that have like a song in them, I'm just a sucker. It's just like immediately like 20 times better for me. Like
oh yeah.
The best part for me about the South Park movie is that it's a musical.
Yeah, the soundtrack is tremendous. Like you could listen to the soundtrack just on Spotify when you're doing other things. Do you know what I mean? It's that good. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I haven't seen the what was that thing they did? The Book of Mormon.
Oh, I've seen it twice.
Oh, really? I was in New York when it launched on Broadway, and there was no chance of getting tickets. Like we queued in Times Square, and we had a very decent amount of money set aside, to get, even if we had to sit at the back and do a matinee or whatever, and it just wasn't happening at all. But I listened to it on Spotify, so I've never seen it, but I have listened to it and still enjoyed it. You know what I mean? So I'd love, maybe similar to the way Hamilton was filmed and put on a streaming platform, I'd like to see maybe the Book of Mormon. Maybe not go to Disney Plus, probably not, but you could certainly film it for Netflix. Sean, I'd be keen to see it now.
Yeah, I mean, something tells me they won't get on Disney Plus, given the amount of times they've taken the piss out of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, I'd say it's doubtful.
Disney seem like they'd be a bit vengeful. Like Mickey seems like a bit of a dick.
Oh yeah, Disney take no shite. But absolutely.
So, like, what would you say your worst experience on stage is? Like, have you got like booed before, or like, I don't know, just like you're just standing there, like you're like, okay, this is gonna kill, and then it's just like crickets.
I think I've been lucky enough. I've never had any, seriously bad experiences. I've had gigs in Lurgan, and that's it. No, I'm joking. But like, but sometimes I don't know. Sometimes you just get gigs that, just you're doing your show, and it's just not the main thing, and it's not really your fault. It's not the crowd's fault. It's like I've had many experiences where a bar decides to put on a comedy night in the main bar. You know what I mean? Where people are going in and having a bit of dinner, maybe a few pints after work, with no interest in hearing stand up. But suddenly then they're being told, can you quieten down because this specky lesbian fella from Strabane is going to speak now for 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Like I always feel if you're going to do a gig in a bar, it should be in a separate room, a back room or an upstairs. But the amount of times they just put you in the main bar. So hypothetically, if you're having a drink with a mate and then you're being told to quieten down because there's stand-up happening, some people will be like, oh, dead on. But a lot of people will be like, I'm not hold. Well, that happened at least 100 times. You're just sitting there going, it's not my fault. It's not their fault. It's just the wrong environment for it, unfortunately. But I've been lucky enough. Haven't had any really nasty hackles. I've had some weird things. I was in Dublin, and an old Spanish woman said that I wasn't very funny, but my hair was lovely. You know what I mean? And
the compliment you can get.
Yeah, and then someone shouted up at me at a gig when I was down in Galway. Funny enough, it's always down south. Some guy shouted, he shouted up aggressively, "Your neck doesn't suit you."
What's that even mean?
But he said it as if, like, you may fucking sort that neck out. What are you doing with a neck like that? How dare you leave the house with a neck like that? And I'm like, what do you want me to do? I can't. I was literally born with it. I mean, sort that neck out, would you?
You didn't have
I
like
can
you
tell
didn't
you.
have like ridiculous like fake tan on like your face, and then just like a white
Uh,
neck, or like or like a fake tanned neck and a white face.
no, I probably I always felt I had a very decent neck. No, prior to that, I would have went. I have one of the best necks in show business, but apparently not. So I have to. That's why I'm doing stand up to save up money to get the surgery necessary to get a neck that does make me look like a Pez machine. I don't know what I don't know what he means. Like I'm so conscious of my neck now. Even you're looking at it. You're looking at it right now. Don't I can say you're trying to scope out what's the neck issue here. You know what I mean? Is it? I mean, was there just a part of it that just didn't grow properly? I don't know. But yeah, so I'm a shite neck bastard, unfortunately.
I mean, hopefully you can get that surgery and then get into that FHM top 100 sexiest necks.
100%. Like
I'm rooting for you, man.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think who's the main competition. I mean, who's got a nice neck?
I don't know. I mean, one of those African women that get like the like rings that they put and it like makes their neck longer. That they got to be like serious competition. But then that's all covered up. But then you can still totally be sexy all covered up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just lost my train of thought, but yeah. No, that's what's been holding me back all these years was just a substandard neck, unfortunately.
Well,
yours is dead on though. You've got a good neck on you. People have always said that.
Thanks.
Yeah,
it's one of the things I'm known for.
Growing
it. So, what do you make of the comedy scene in Northern Ireland?
It's tremendous. It's absolutely, and it's not me brown nosing. What I'm about to say, like, I mean, I started, there was a handful of gigs. You would be lucky to do 2 or 3 gigs a month, really. And that's not just because you were starting out, and just because even like there was a decent open mic scene in the Pavilion, then there was Masons and Derry, there's Dailies and Oma and stuff like that, and then there was random ones that popped up. But really, there was nothing concrete. You basically had to work your way up to try and get into the Empire. But that was very difficult to do when you were doing 2 or 3 gigs a month, if even. So it took a long time to get in there. Whereas now, you have people like Dave Elliott has been running like Pug Uglies. And then it stretched out into the Boneyard, which is their outdoor venue, which I did when the lockdown lifted. Lavery's, Colin Geddes runs Lavery's, and that's twice a month. Pug Uglies is weekly. Now I think it's going to bi-weekly. And there's a really strong open mic scene, and there's gigs in the Accidental Theatre, and then you can still travel about the north. But the scene now is night and day, and I mean that in the best way. Like, there was always comedians when I started out, really, really good ones, but there was never an audience. I don't know why that was. I don't know if it was very much we prefer to go to the Empire and nowhere else, and we don't want to see, other comedians or whatever. Whereas now crowds are coming out to see. You look at like Paddy Raff, Colin Geddes, Shane Todd, Mickey Bartlett, Aaron, Dave, all doing 1,000+ seated venues. And it's a testament to obviously all the comedians who work hard because you get a lot of repeat people coming out. Every comedian on the scene writes new stuff solidly, whereas maybe places down south and in England don't need to do that. They can have a solid 7 to 10, maybe up to 20 minutes that they can just use for at least 2 years. And it's solid, and that's what they do. We couldn't do that. Once someone sees you in Lavery's, if you come back and do some of the same stuff, they won't say anything. But when you do it again and they've seen the thing again 3 times, then they'll be like, what's this? You know what I mean? So you had to keep writing. And that's why everybody has just got to this level now where they're selling out big venues, and people are flocking to it. You think for such a small city, the fact that there is that bunch of comedians that can sell really big venues without really affecting each other's sales, it's mad. And it's just a real testament to just how everyone here just seems to love it now. Like, everybody is like listening to your podcast, follows you on social media, and then wants to know about your life and come see you in big venues and support you on Patreon. And if you put up a sketch, they're sharing it on their story. And It's honestly, like, long story short, it's night and day, but it's brilliant, and it's only going to get better. I know COVID's kind of put the dampener on it a wee bit, but I don't think that's going to harm it long term, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm normally in the winter I run this little bar in Austria, and I'm still out here because my boss keeps saying, because they keep saying, oh, it's just a few more weeks and then we'll open. My boss keeps going, you know, Josh, it's all right. Just chill out. Just go skiing. Just wait for the place to open and then it'll be fine. Because he's convinced, like, the second that we're allowed to open anything, like, we're going to be rammed. Because everyone's just going to be like scrambling for any amount of crack that you can possibly find.
Yeah. What sort of, is it an Irish bar in Austria, or is it just a bar?
No, it's just a little, like, it's not an après ski bar, like, but that's technically what it is. But it's just this little tiny, like, dive bar in a ski resort. Awesome. Which, yeah, it's like I like to tell people it's the greatest bar in the world because I genuinely believe that. But I might be biased because I run it.
Well, that's fair. It's better than you coming out and saying it's shite. You know what I mean? Just don't come here. Don't.
Well, no. I mean, there's like one of the snowboard instructors that I know. He's from New Jersey, and he's been coming here every year for 20 years. And he used to joke that anytime anyone went home, or anytime he went home and he was asking, or people were asking him, oh, you know, where'd you go? Is it any good? Blah, blah, blah. He would always just be like, no, don't go there. Because he wanted it to remain his little secret.
Yeah, I know what, I would tend to agree. Like, are you in Austria right now?
Yeah.
Oh, really? That's awesome. My internet is better than I thought. I don't know. Yeah, I can see the principle of that, where you want it to feel like yours. You know what I mean? There's nothing worse than when you're in a place that you like, and then other people come in, even if it's like somewhere public, and you're like, bollocks. You know, if you got a really nice restaurant to yourself, and then suddenly there's like a rush of people, and you're like, it's the worst. So I can see where it's coming from there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if you find like a cool little dive bar somewhere, or like a restaurant, like you said, and then it's like your little secret, and then all of a sudden it hits like top 10 on TripAdvisor, and it's filled with a whole bunch of like fucking normies that don't get the atmosphere, and you're like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah, it must be tough, I'd assume, because it's almost like being a victim of your own success, where you have this sort of very niche, as you say. There's like a vibe, and all the small bunch of people who go there regularly understand, here's the vibe, here's the sort of music you can play in the jukebox, and here's the and yet you sort of know people by their first name, or at least what they're about, and then suddenly a load of students land in, a load of hipsters with monocles and tennis rackets for shoes and all, and half a Mohican and rubbing pesto on each other, and you're like, why are they here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
what's it called?
Snorting pepper with shots of
pepper.
Sambuca.
Yeah, just to be rare. Just take a shot like a normal person. Why do you have to do this snorting Tabasco? And what do you do? Just drink the thing. You know what I mean? Like, it says me that just sits there with a half pint of Smithwick's, like a 70-year-old. What's the actual bar called?
It's just called the Alm Bar. Like, Alm is
the Alm Bar.
The Alm Bar, because it's like in an alm, and alm's like a mountain sort of hut thing. It's in this tiny little resort that like no one's ever fucking heard of. But the reason I go there is because my uncle has been playing in a band that come here for like 30 years, and they come and they like fill this hotel in like one of the villages, and they play like 4 times in 2 weeks. And last year was their 30th year since they were coming there. It's pretty cool. They were
awesome.
So I was always here when I was a kid. And then the first time I was able to, like, when I was a kid, I would always hear like them talking about what happened in this bar the day before. And they'd all be like sitting there with headaches, and I had no idea what was going on. I'd be like, are you hungover? Like, not knowing what a hangover even fucking meant. and then the first time I went in and like got properly drunk with them all when I was 18, I was like, holy shit, this is the greatest bar in the world. I want to work here someday. And then I get to now, which is cool.
That's awesome, man. It must be just that nostalgia element for you.
I think that helps. But like, we have like a really cool crowd of regulars, of like local people. There's like a roster of about, I don't know, 100 150 people that come from like the surrounding area to ski, and then they come to me after, which is really cool because it's like this like huge family, and it's fun because you never know who's going to walk in, but then you're always going to have like fun people that you know there like every day, which is really cool. Like it's
yeah,
it's a lot of fun. I can't complain at all.
It sounds really cool, man, because I think, you can't buy that, I mean, that vibe and those people. I mean, you can put as much money as you want into decorating the place and having it like look a certain way, but fundamentally you can't buy a vibe, you can't buy ambience. You know what I mean? And I think like there's a lot of bars now that seem to try and do that, and they don't always do it. They think just because they've got sort of weird chairs and beers from Slovakia that they're the hottest spot in town. But sometimes you can go in somewhere and just be like, I'm just not, just doesn't have it. It just doesn't have it. It's hard to explain, but it just doesn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, like my bar is fucking. I like to joke that the only thing that works in there is me, because the beer taps don't work, the glass machine only fucking half works. The speakers, well, I got new speakers thankfully last like 2 years ago, and they're the greatest thing I ever bought. But like the door, the lock on the door like comes out of the door sometimes. Bathroom door doesn't work. Like there was like one of the stalls in the bathroom, like we couldn't get it closed for like a year. We just couldn't get the fucking thing to shut and lock right. And then there was this dude who's a really good friend of him now. But like the first time he ever came in, we got super drunk drinking this mango schnapps that I'd made. And then he just like disappeared into the bathroom, managed to lock the fucking door and then pass out on the toilet. And
always the way.
Like to this day, we've no idea how he managed to lock the door.
You just lethal. It's always those sort of nights always happen when you're drinking something, as you say, like mango schnapps. It's always, that never happens if you're just drinking Smithwick's. It doesn't. It's always we're drinking watermelon vodka. It's always something like that. We're like,
you joke about that. That's the other speciality that I make is watermelon vodka.
Watermelon vodka. Yeah, I love it. Oh, it's always nice. It's always those drinks that lead to those sort of escapades. I love it.
Yeah, they destroy people. But yeah, so right. So what is in the world right now that we are not laughing at that we should be? Like, what are we not taking advantage of for comedy?
That's a good but tough question, I have to say. I don't. What should we be laughing at? We should be laughing. God, I don't know. That's a really tough question. Do you mean in general? Like, is there anything? The only thing really that I find, the thing that I'm enjoying at the moment that's kind of saved my lockdown outside of the podcast is the TV channel 5 Star. You ever watched anything on 5 Star?
No.
It's I don't know if you'll get it out in Austria. I'll get your box chipped. I mean, you can watch it. 5 Star basically has, those TV shows that are so shite, but they know they're shite. You know what I mean? Like, not reality shows, but like it's always stuff like Booze Britain, Life on the Dole, Can't Pay, Will Take It Away, which is like vlogs from bailiffs, essentially. You know what I mean? Anything with the word dole in it, I'm watching it. Dole, Nazis on the Dole, I'll watch it. Anything Dole, oh my God.
Is that on the History Channel?
It should be, because I would love to see Nazis queuing and then find out that their dole's been cut off because they've been working in a hipster barbers on the side doing mustaches.
Yeah, well, no doubt they have some sort of anti-Semitic reason for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're somewhat angry people, the Nazis. But yeah, that's what saved my life. Everybody should be watching 5 Star and just watch, particularly that show Can't Pay, Will Take It Away. It's honestly like it's just bailiffs going about just taking people's stuff because and it's always like these people, they're just like surprised that the bailiffs have landed at their door, but they're like, you owe 127 grand on a TK Maxx card that you haven't paid back, so we're absolutely taking your air fryer and you'll have to live with. Because the way it works is, I've learned all about it, is they're actually called like and like what do they call themselves now? They don't call themselves bailiffs anymore. It's something like high court enforcement is what they're called now, which is when you work in Subway and call yourself a sandwich artist. You're like, are you really? So they come in and
Subways can get pretty beautiful, man. Like,
oh yeah,
like if you're hungover and you're sitting there like watching the guy like assemble your foot long like meatball marinara, and you're just sitting there being like, that is the sexiest thing I have ever seen.
Yeah, to be fair, if you get a sandwich artist that's on the ball, 100%. But when you get the people that just like fling lettuce at a bit of bread and don't put any effort into it, but yeah, the high court enforcers, they basically go to these people's houses and be like, we have a high court writ, which is the document, and they go, you owe 100 grand because you didn't, pay bills for your vet or something like that there. And then they go, can you pay that today? Who can pay 100 grand? Just, do you know what I mean? Like if I rang you tomorrow and be like, can you give me a fiver? You'd have to think about it. But 100 grand, you'd just be going, are you joking? You're not going, but right now, no worries. Let me just go get that Coca-Cola money box on top of the fridge. And say like, it's so stupid to them when they can't pay
hopefully by next week, I'll just be like, it's all right. I'll just sell one of my GameStop stocks and it'll be all exactly. Good.
Yeah, job done. But yeah, watch it. Honestly, there's loads of it, loads of seasons, and it's sometimes can get very not violent, but it does get a bit violent now when people are like, I don't have any money, and they're like, well, we're going to take your Samsung Plasma TV, and then like they have the legal right to go into the people's houses. They can't refuse an entry. They can go in, particularly if the door's open. They can literally let themselves in when you're lying, like ironically, probably watching. Can't pay, will take it away, and then they come in behind you and lift the sofa while you're still on it, and just.
Yeah, like the guy's walking up to the door, and you're like the woman sat on or the guy sat on the fucking sofa, like watching it, being like, that house looks familiar. Like that looks like our front door, and the doorbell rings. You're like, hang on.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's one thing I would be imploring people to watch that, or any shows like it. Any wee shows that don't take themselves too seriously, where there's just people who are. Like Booze Britain, they just follow people drinking all night, and they have like a graphic on the screen of the units of alcohol that they've been consuming. So it shows you pre-drinking, bar, club, kebab shop, house party stage, and then you see them like phoning like the dodgy taxi guy who can give you carryouts from his car, which is a thing in Belfast as well. It's great. You know what I mean? Things like that, and they just kind of leave a GoPro sitting in a house and just let it film, and then you just see people. Do you know what I mean?
That's got to be the lowest production value show on the planet. Like you just need a GoPro and some drunk people. That's not a difficult thing to find.
Exactly. Yeah, and particularly here, if they did it on like Paddy's Day in the Holy Lands, you would get about 10 seasons out of that. HBO would sign that up.
I mean, like you could turn it into a proper fucking drama. You'd have Stephen Nolan run like sort of waddling about with his camera team, being like, "We're going to find teenagers that are drinking too much on Paddy's Day. Have you ever heard such a travesty?" Like,
yeah, he gets really into that, doesn't he? He was chasing people who weren't wearing masks and stuff like that, and
like,
all right.
I had a friend of mine who said, like, if he came up to him. If he was at a petrol station and Stephen Nolan come up and be like, "Where's your mask, sir? Do you not care, sir?" He would just deck him, and like, he thinks he would it's like, yeah. You see, if you were the guy to punch Stephen Nolan on camera, you would have your legal fees paid for. If you set up a GoFundMe, like your legal fees would be paid for in 30 minutes, and you would immediately be the most popular man in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I think the best way to do it is get someone to film it for you and put your PayPal details on the screen, and you'd be a billionaire. Like when you see people on Witherspoons that put up on Facebook, "I'm at Witherspoons Belfast at table 78," and people can send you drinks via the Witherspoons app. They can do that. It's the equivalent to that. Put your PayPal on the screen, and then just hit Stephen Nolan, and you'll buy your own island. You know what I mean? With that much money. You know what I mean? And you could pay all your bills back, and there'd be no more bailiffs coming to your house. You know what I mean? That's how you get out of debt. Film yourself hitting unlikable people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you golden.
Who else could you get? Who's really who? I don't know if there's anyone more hated than Stephen Nolan. I actually like in Northern Ireland at least. Piers Morgan, maybe get.
I was
Piers.
about to say Piers Morgan. I would happily drop kick him into a wood chipper. I really don't like that guy. Trump, I mean, Trump's pretty high on the list, I suppose. Again, I don't know anything about politics, but doesn't seem he was overly popular.
He was like, it's amazing. He was like simultaneously the most hated man and the most beloved at the same time. It was incredible. Like you either like fervently hated the guy or you thought he was like the greatest thing since like sliced bread.
Yeah. He was proper, like he was Marmite, wasn't he? Well, more marmalade probably, the color of him, but he it's mad. It's like, again, I don't like keep track of politics, but he was either loved or hated. In terms of someone who's universally hated, I would make the statement that Katie Hopkins, she has to be universally hated. I can't think of any reason why anybody would go, I think she's all right, because she's got that like old man in a bar who talks a wee bit too provocatively, but it's like they actually mean it. Do you know what I mean? You know that you've got an old fella in the bar that's just like, oh, I don't like this, and you're like, all right, mate, no problem. Whereas Katie Hopkins is like sober on a talk show, just going, don't name your kids this, COVID's fake and whatever. It's fucking mad.
Oh yeah, the best one she came out with, she called refugees, like she compared them to cockroaches. He was just like, I mean, like that, like, yeah.
Ballsy.
Yeah, ballsy. I think asshole is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I think she, like, if you filmed, again, got a wee GoPro and just filmed someone drop kicking her, not only you would get a serious social media following, and as I say, just the money would start rolling in. If everybody who's seen it gave you 50p, you know what I mean? You'd still be a billionaire. No sweat.
Set up an OnlyFans for just like decking unpopular people.
Yeah, call it like Only Smacks.
Only
just
Smacks.
Call it just do that. And again, I think we're on to something here. This could be a very meaty idea. I mean, obviously, I don't know how you wouldn't get done for assault because you've ironically filmed yourself doing it. Unless you pixel it. I don't know how you would do it, but if you could get away with it.
They can't tell who you are.
Yeah, wear the mask and then have it as like a private link, and anybody who wants to see it has to give you £1, and then keep it unlisted on YouTube, and you'll be grand.
Yeah, I never thought in a million years like people would be begging for balaclava equivalents in Northern Ireland to come back.
Yeah. I seen something on Twitter when the masks were first introduced. And there was a lot of people in Northern Ireland that were very anti-mask and didn't feel it was necessary and stuff like that. Whatever floats your boat, I don't really get involved. But some guys said on Twitter that basically the masks just look like cut-offs from balaclavas anyway. So you know what I mean? Like when you cut the hole out of the mouth to make a balaclava, just keep the stray bit of thing, you know what I mean? 2 elastics and you've got the job done, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
I loved it. Yeah.
So what are your plans then for when we open up again? Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Back to stand up for sure. If anybody will have me. The podcast is still going strong, so I've hit this week's solo episode is episode 76, and then my extra branch podcast, which is with a guest, it's at like 37 or something as well. So it's going to keep going strong. I have booked a solo show in Belfast for February next year, but it's not announced. So I don't know if I could say it on here. I don't know when this goes out. I don't know when I'm announcing the show anyway, but
a couple of weeks probably this will be out. So
yeah,
too late.
Follow me on social media. You'll see the vibe, but there is a sort of solo Belfast show next year, which is good. So I'll be working towards that and just keeping the podcast going. And I don't know how the rest of the year is going to go. I mean, I've kind of used all the lockdown periods, like most people, you know, to try and be productive and even do like the boring shite, you know, like, because you're not really able to do anything. So you're like, well, now is the time to update my CV, defrost the freezer, do the guttering, learn Arabic. You just try and do as much as you can. I'd say all the boring stuff. Like I had to get registered with a doctor. It's really not for any reason, just because I just wasn't registered. Had to do that and send away for a provisional license. So I've got all the boring stuff kind of done. So when everywhere opens, I just kind of want to. I'll do anything. Like I'll be straight on the Groupon when the Groupon's a thing again. Because per folks at Groupon can't do anything. Whereas when everything's lifted, hopefully maybe September, I don't know, and I get some Groupon offers, I'll do whatever they offer. If they send me a voucher to go paragliding in Dungannon, I'm doing it. I'm 100%. I'm going to go see Scouting for Girls. I'm going to go see. I don't care what it is. I'll go to a seance. I'll go to a drive-in mass. I just don't. I'll do anything. So basically, that's my answer. I'll do literally anything. I'll go Zumba. I'll start dogging. I'll do whatever it takes to just be out of the house. You know what I mean? That's my vibe on it.
Underwater CrossFit.
Yes, underwater CrossFit, and I'm gonna write a sitcom called Nazis on the Dole, and I'm gonna take on some part-time work as a bailiff, and take people's chainsaws and stuff like that. Just do whatever. But I'm gonna just try and be busy, but in a more enjoyable way instead of being busy. You know what I mean? Repainting the bathroom or grouting the bathroom tiles. Don't know, with that fucking white bollocks and just spraying it on. Just going, isn't this great? Man, is it? Because like when the lockdown came in, that was me. When was the lockdown official? End of March. I was married. That was still within my first year of marriage. And they say first year of marriage is the hardest. Oh wow. And then you're on lockdown together. And then I think my wife Lisa has now fully acknowledged exactly how much of a tit I am. Like when I was away doing gigs and stuff, she was aware that I was a tit, but it was small doses. It was a wee drabs during the day. But when we're both working from home together and she's getting the full force 24/7 tit woodsy, I think she's going to buy me a bib for Christmas. I think she's worried. She didn't realize how much of a tit I really am. Or like she got our toilet seat broke and she found one online in like a pound stretcher near my house. She was like, go to pound stretcher and get the toilet seat. And I was like, okay, WhatsApp it to me. She goes, what? I was like, WhatsApp me the link to the toilet seat. And she was like, it's a fucking toilet seat. What do you need? Why do you need a link to? Do you not know what one looks like? Like, what are you going to come back with a giant horseshoe? Like, and she's just like, it's a toilet seat. Just go to the shop and get the toilet seat. Like, what do I need to link it for you for? It's not like a very specific perfume or makeup. It's not that level of specificity, if that's even a word. It's a toilet seat. There's
specificity, I think.
Specificity.
Yeah.
I don't know if you see to my Twitter, I still can't pronounce Worcestershire sauce. Still can't do it.
Worcestershire. Oh, you're fucking with me now.
Exactly. It's hard, isn't it? It's fucking hard, man. Worcestershire. Liam parents.
Worcestershire sauce.
Worcestershire. Like my wife can't say specific. She can't say that. No. Which is handy when we don't have a specific toilet seat in mind, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you're still going strong after this year, like the next year should be plain sailing.
Oh yeah. I mean, during we've been in lockdown together and also built things from Argos together. So that's all set for life. I mean, if you can get through that, if you can build a lack table together without like violence, then you know soulmates. That's it. If you can read instructions together, that's a true test of your love, of your love.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends especially if you're two different types of people. It depends. Like if your wife's like, no, we're going to read the instructions first. And you're like, fuck it. We'll just throw it all together. It'll be fine. Or the other way around. And you manage to get through it. That's even more impressive.
Yeah. Oh, you've hit the nail on the head there. She's very by the book, very, here's the instructions and wee things like she has to, all the switches have to be off at night, not for like the fridge or anything, but see like TV, charger, stuff like that, all has to be off. when you go do the big shop, when you're putting stuff away in the fridge or in the cupboards or in the freezer, you need to be able to open the door to the fridge or a cupboard and see everything instead of just putting it in the cupboard and going around. She's like, it needs to be so you can see, well, we've got 2 tins of beans, 10 of tomatoes, chickpeas, peanut butter, pesto. You know what I mean? You have to be able to see everything. Or I'm just like I just fling things. Do you know what I mean? It's like, there you go, past it. There you go. It's in there somewhere.
You know, it's all in there.
Exactly. But she's just like, nope, I will not have that. So I'm like, okay, so happy to be married. Love. Great.
Oh, right. Well, that feels like a nice positive note on which to end things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man. Is there anything you want to plug before we finish?
Just Woods Talk. Say the podcast is out every Friday. Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. I'm on YouTube as well, video podcasts. And then I'm on Patreon as well for any early access to things. You can go on Patreon, fire a few quid in a month and get early access to everything. And I'm launching a new thing called Woodsy Watches on my Patreon over the next year, which is like movie commentaries and retrospectives and stuff like that, which should be cool. So
I hope it's all five star TV.
Oh, for sure. I'm just doing all 19 seasons of, you know what I mean, Nazis on the Dole. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely. All of that.
I look forward to it. But yeah, man, thanks very much.
Thanks. You're more than welcome. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed that.
No problem. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, dude.
Thanks so much for listening. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast and to our mailing list. And don't forget, my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description below. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.